Hi. The purpose of this video is to help you understand the April 30th, 2024 Asana permissions change that could have consequences for you. Project admins and super admins who are affected have already seen in-product notifications and also received an email from Asana. And others may have noticed some banners in Asana on their projects. So why is this important? Because Asana is making a change on April 30th that may affect you. And basically, if a project meets certain conditions, then it's affected or in conflict. And if so, then without any action on your part, then on April 30th, certain project members will begin to receive a higher level of project access permissions than they've had prior to April 30th. So if you're not affected, then you can ignore all this, obviously. If you are affected, though, you want to understand what's happening and probably act in one of the ways I'll mention before April 30th if you have the opportunity. So a couple of conditions need to be met in a project for this change to apply and be in conflict. So those are that someone, that could be a member of your organization or a guest to your organization, needs to be in this project list that's shown here as a project member. You can see there are two people here. And they have to have a level of access here, in this case, commenter, that's lower than this first line, which is the default level of access. So those are the two conditions, in the project and a lower level of access than the default one. The conflict is because the person's explicit access, commenter here, as a project member, is at a lower level than their default access as specified in the default access row, as I just mentioned. And the changes that prior to April 30th, Asana interprets this duality of permissions by assigning the lowest one, commenter in this case. So if the user is a commenter here and the default is editor, then that user is going to be a commenter or has been a commenter permission. That's going to win out the lower one of the two. That's again currently up until 4/30th. But on 4/30 and after forever, Asana is going to interpret this differently. It will give the user the higher of the two permissions, in this case, editor. So this is called elevated access. That could be a security issue for you. Or it could be no big deal. It really depends on your specific situation, what's in your project, who the person is, and so on. But they're getting a greater level of permission, so that's something you might want to be careful about. So what can you do? Well, there's two kind of main ways to react to this. One is actually resolve this yourself in one of several ways, which I'll get into. That's the only way to prevent something automatically happening. That's that elevated access, which is what Asana is going to do on April 30th for the affected projects and the affected people. You could either one, take some action, or two, do nothing and let Asana go ahead and resolve it automatically with that elevated access on April 30th. Now, if you choose the first of doing something about it, some of your choices are going to go away starting on April 30th. So you have to act before that if you're watching this video before April 30th. But don't worry if you're not. There's more things that I'll cover that you can do after April 30th. So your first main option is resolve before April 30th. Let's look at what you'll see in Asana if there are any conflicts, as we've seen a little bit here already. So we've been looking, in this project, which is in conflict, as it says here at the top. But you're going to notice that initially, right at the project level, with this banner up at the top here, and we can click in here and see what Asana is offering that you can do. Actually, I'm going to cover this in a second. Let's click the share dialog back where we were before. And we can see, as we've already learned, somebody's permission is lower than the default level of permission. So one thing that you can do is you can raise this permission of each of these members who are in default. There's only one here or in conflict. Um, and that warning up here has just gone away and the grayed out one back here has gone away. We've just resolved the conflict by giving that person a higher level of access. Um, that's one way to do it. Let's set it back to where it was. Another way to do it is lower this level of access so that that person's is no longer higher than the default. Remember, that was one of the conditions. So if we did that, then that's going to resolve it too. And I've just made it back in conflict again this way. So those are the two main ways. Another way is, in rare circumstances, you could also create a new narrower team and put the project in that team. That might offer you other options. And this is going to be particularly effective in the near future because Asana is implementing team sharing on projects where you can share projects with entire teams easily. So that's not coming immediately, but it's coming soon. But one of those other options that I just showed you is certainly easy to do. Now, there's one more option that's available until April 30th. You can let Asana do this for you. So that's what I started to do a second ago. If you go ahead and click this view your options, you can read this and it'll describe what Asana is going to do, but it's basically your two options are they're telling you there's only one member in conflict and they're going to go ahead and elevate the access to editor. That was the first thing I manually did. Or you could instead reduce the access of the default team level access or organization-wide access. It's just the default access to the project if you're not a member, from editor to commenter. That's the other way, and that was the second thing that I did. So if you go ahead and do that, you can do it for as many members are in conflict for this particular project, just with set the preference and that'll take that action. Or you can back out with this if you want. So those are the ways to do it automatically by Asana, project by project. Now, that's not the only thing Asana is offering. If you go to the home page of a project admin who has an affected project, then they're also going to see on their home page a notice here. There actually is a kind of a exception case where if that person, that project admin has many projects, I think it's pretty rare, but I've seen it happen, you're not going to see this notice here. So you'd have to rely on the email notice that you got, or I'll show you in a second another approach. So what does this do? This basically lets you see for this person logged in, I'm logged in as Chris over here. If I click this, I'm going to see all the projects where I'm a project admin and I'm able to treat each one in, individually and go ahead and correct it. So if I were to go to this, it's exactly going to take me to that dialogue that I showed you a minute ago. It's going to operate on that one project. And then I could go ahead and clean that one up and do the other two, and then this would go away and all these notices would go away. So that's what you could do at the project admin level. Now, there's one other place you could go if you happen to be the, let me go to another window here, if I can find it. If you're the super admin of your organization, and not just the Asana admin, but you have to be the Asana super admin or a super admin, then you can go to the admin console, click settings, and you'll see another notice up here about access permissions. And if you click that, you're going to get another choice here. And what this is telling you is 3 projects are impacted, and it's offering you those 2 choices, but to operate across all the projects and across all the members of those projects and take care of them in one fell swoop by elevating their access or decreasing their access. You can go ahead and do that, and that'll take care of everything. Doesn't actually tell you which projects they are, but it will just go ahead and do it and fix it, and then you're done. Again, only available until April 30th. Um, Go back to the other view here. So um, now, if you notice that there are three projects. If you didn't go ahead and use that dialogue and you wanted to try to go about this manually and figure out what those three projects are, I'm afraid you're going to have to search for them. So what you could do is you could just alert all your project admins and say, go look at your homepage and see if you've got any projects. Or you could do an advanced search. Just click the search bar, then click advanced search, which I did already. If you put in here a person as the project owner, figuring maybe that person is going to be the project admin, usually an owner of a project is an admin, then, and that's all you need to put in here. Then you could go ahead and do a search, and it's going to show up by default with tasks, but click projects, and you're going to see the owner. That'll be the just the projects that that person owns. And you could click into each one of these just by clicking it, and you'll get to where we were a second ago. You could go in and look at that project and fix it up at that point, or see if it's in conflict. The other thing you could do is, instead of looking for the owner, so the assignee when you look for projects is actually the owner. But if you put your own name or anybody's name here in collaborators and you search and click projects, it's going to show any project, not that that person is an owner, but that person is a member of the project. So that's going to be a much more vast list there, but that's a way to find out, at least for that person who you think might be an admin, you can see if they're a member of the project and then check if they're really an admin, and if that's in conflict, and you can go fix it that way. Now, all of that was that sort of first active option where you attempt to solve these problems. The other option that I gave you at the beginning, the second main option, was do nothing. Let Asana go ahead and elevate those accesses on, or elevate those permissions on April 30th. So if you're watching this video and it's after April 30 and you didn't do any action, or it's before April 30th and you're just wondering what's going to happen if I don't do anything, then here's what's going to happen. On April 30th, Asana is automatically going to assume this elevated access level for project members where there were conflicts by reinterpreting the conflicting permissions to grant the highest, not the lowest permission, as I was explaining before. So previously, if they had commenter access, but the default was editor access, then they're now going to have editor access. Now, after they do that, after April 30th, you're going to actually see they're going to leave behind a remnant. They're going to leave that person as commenter, even though this is editor, and they're going to warn you and tell you that this person can edit because they belong to a group with editor access. So they're resolving the conflict. They're just by interpreting the higher level, not the lower level of access, and they're reminding you that's happening. And then you could go ahead and change that if you wanted to do something to make it go back to where you were hoping to have it be. Yeah, so basically that's, I think, really all I wanted to show you at this point. If, the purpose of this video was not to do anything more than explain what's happening, not to weigh in on it in any way, but I should mention that, we all have to adapt to this, even Asana does, one time, and I've presented the options for how to do that. And I think Asana had to make this change due to the complexity of managing a variety of features and the potential for conflicts to arise with all these complex features, and also to make way for new features. So One of those new features is viewer access. That's a new permission level that will be available, I think, right after April 30th. Potentially, you already have access to that if you didn't have any conflicts in your environment. Um, but that viewer access, that new feature, it's not really otherwise related to this. It's just kind of a um, requirement for Asana that this is taken care of before that's available. But it's not really related to this particular instructions that I've given here, that I've laid out for you. Um, and the other new feature is that Teams feature that I mentioned, where teams can be project members. That's another powerful change that's expected in the next months that I think necessitated this change here. So thanks for watching. I hope it helped, and thanks again.